Hello and welcome to the wrap up for what is unfortunately my worst reading month of the year. I did not read nearly as much as I usually do in August. I still have read quite a few books, so I'm not mad about it, but it is much less than I would normally do. There is a reason for that. I bought the new Switch game, Tales of the Shire, which is a cozy Lord of the Rings game where you are just a hobbit living in a village, making meals for your neighbors and foraging in the woods. And it's lovely, and I spent far too much time playing that game. So I was at least doing things that I enjoy. But without ramble, let's get into the stats and the books. So in August, I finished a total of 13 books and DNF'd 3, which gave me a grand total of 4,374 pages and 48 and a half hours of audiobook listening, which is approximately 15 hours less than I normally do, which coincidentally is the precise amount of time that I spent playing Tales of the Shire. So we see exactly where my time went in the last half of the month. And same as last month, I am going to be doing my wrap-ups a bit differently, more similar to the way that Kayla at Books and Lala does her wrap-up, because they are much more quick and less miserable to film. So I'm not going to be going over every single book that I've read, only the ones that I have something to say about. So with that said, let's start with the DNFs. Two of my DNFs were both for Backlist Bash, and those were The Beast Player and A Peculiar Peril. Beast Player I got about 170 pages into and just wasn't really interested in. I liked the magic system and the world building, but the plot was really not interesting to me. And A Peculiar Peril I read maybe 15 pages of, and it was not making any sense to me at all. It was a little bit too whimsical for my taste, unfortunately. And then I also soft DNF'd Hot Girls with Balls. I do want to try this one again over audiobook. I was reading the ebook and the format was really irritating to read. I believe there were no chapters in it, and there was also no quotation marks for dialogue, so it just looked like a gigantic wall of text, and I could not do that over ebook. So at some point, whenever I find the audiobook, I will try this one again. And then I have one book that I am not rating because I don't like to give star ratings for things like nonfiction and poetry, just because I don't have the skills to talk about them in a way that feels fair. But this month I read the Serviceberry and had a phenomenal time with this book. It was really short and I would have loved for it to be longer just because it was so enjoyable that I wanted more out of it. But as is, it is a beautiful little piece of wisdom that I thoroughly enjoyed. It's a nonfiction just about people's relationship with nature and how there should be an equal give and take and how we can pass that on to our relationships with other humans as well. And it was just lovely. I really enjoyed this one. Lucky for me, I had no 1 or 2 star reads this month, so let's get into the 3 stars. Starting with So Let Them Burn by Kamilah. This one was unfortunately a bit of a letdown for me. I really enjoyed parts of it, mainly the magic and the dragons, both the actual dragons and the mecha dragons. Cool as fuck. Really enjoyed those parts of it, but the plot and the characters were not my thing personally. I don't often read YA anymore, and this is an example of why, just because the characters didn't have the maturity to make smart choices, and I find that to be irritating personally. Mayra was also a 3-star read for me. I liked the idea of this one, and I'll definitely read more from this author in the future, but this was a debut book, and that was very evident. I feel like things could have been fleshed out a lot more. The plot was interesting and definitely had promise, but the execution was not that strong. I feel like this author probably took inspiration from books like What Moves the Dead and Mexican Gothic, and I really love those kinds of books. So while this book being similar to those books was a plus, it was also a negative towards it as well, because I couldn't help but compare it to those 2 books, and both of those authors are powerhouse authors, so it's not really a fair comparison, but I just couldn't help it because it had such a similar vibe to those books that it was really hard not to. It really didn't live up to what I was hoping it would be, but definitely an author to watch. The Girl from Shadow Springs is one that I read for Backlist Bash, and this one took me by surprise. This one is also a YA that I actually quite enjoyed. The setting is definitely my favorite part of it. It is a western, but it's pure ice, so picture like western saloon settings and all that kind of thing, but make it a frozen tundra with sled dogs instead of horses, and that is this book, and it was awesome. The plot twists and the reveals and the whole climax of the story was pretty terrible, but the rest of it was fantastic, especially the vibes. They were immaculate. My last 3-star was Invitations, the third and what I thought was the final book in the Girls Weekend series by CM Nascosta. Unfortunately, it's not the last book of the series. The author is just choosing to self-publish the rest of it. I think over Patreon, I'm pretty sure. This will be the last book for me. I have had enough of this series. The first book was really fun. The second book was slightly less fun, and this one was pretty terrible. And 2 out of 3 couples that the series follows really irritate me, and the third one I only kind of like. So I am finished with this series now. Moving on to the 3.5-star reads. The first one is Blood of the Old Kings. This one I feel like could have been really good if it was longer, and I do not say that often. I am not a huge fan of like overly long books, but this one really could have used an extra even like 100 pages. It could have used a lot more space to grow, because the premise of it feels like it should be a really epic fantasy, but then it skips all of the bits in the middle that would have made it really epic. Any travel scenes where the main characters are like, oh, here's the plan for how we're gonna defeat the bad guy, let's go do it, and the next scene they're just all of a sudden there and they're fighting. So there was no build up, and it ended up feeling kind of flat for that reason. But the characters were great, the writing style was really nice. I loved the magic, the world building, the setting, everything else was fantastic. It was just that it felt really rushed was the issue. The Conductors by Nicole Glover. This one was read for Backlist Bash as well. I don't have much to say about this one. It was good, I enjoyed it for the most part, but the magic felt really random and completely unnecessary, and the rest was just a murder mystery, which I'm really not a fan of, so this wasn't the book for me, but I could definitely see being the book for somebody else. And my last 3.5-star was Holy Terrors by Margaret Owen, the third and final book in the Little Thieves trilogy. And unfortunately, a little bit of a letdown. I still enjoyed it for the characters, but the plot completely lost me. I didn't have a clue what was going on the whole time, especially the last half of the book. I was trying so hard to pay attention. I went back and reread chapters and tried to get a grasp on the plot, and it just wasn't clicking for me, so sadly not my favorite. But the characters were still fantastic. I love this cast of characters so much, so I still enjoyed it for that reason. I gave 4 stars to A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, which while I enjoyed, I really don't have anything to say about it. It's one of those books that is very well done, and I do recommend it if you're looking for a fun time, but it didn't leave a lasting impression. 10,000 Stitches. This is the sequel to Half a Soul. I liked the first book but didn't love it. I did consider not continuing the series, but because the reason for not liking the first book was just that I didn't like the plot or the characters, but I still liked the writing style and the setting, I figured I would still try book 2 and see if that one worked better for me, and it definitely did. I had a pretty good time with this one. I liked the characters way better, especially the love interest. He's just so silly and sweet and ridiculous and an absolute cinnamon roll. So I very much enjoyed this book and can't wait to read book 3 as well. My last of the 4 stars is Bryony and Roses by T. Kingfisher. This is one of her older books, so I was a little hesitant because I have tried some of her older books before and didn't really like them, but I do want to read her entire backlist one day, so I figured I would give this one a go, and I actually ended up really enjoying it. Despite the fact that I am not a fan of Beauty and the Beast, I really don't like that general plot, but if any author can make me like that story, it's gonna be T. Kingfisher. While this was probably my least favorite one that I've actually finished from her, it was still a 4-star and very much a good time. It was the perfect amount of creepy, it had a really cool setting, the magic was interesting, and the banter between the love interest and the main character was fantastic. My one and only 4.5 star was Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. Books like this are the reason why I still pick up YA once in a while, even though I often end up not liking it. I do sometimes find gems like this one that make me want to continue reading YA once in a while. This was phenomenal. It was disgusting and gory. It was full of body horror, trans rage, and religious trauma, and that is just so my vibe. This was fantastic. Also, funny story and bonus points for this book, but I was reading this book on the bus, and I am not kidding you, the dude next to me was reading the literal Bible. And that was just so funny to me. I saw him in the corner of my eye and I'm like, ooh, a person reading. Let me look over and just be nosy. And I see him grab the Bible and I died laughing. It was so good. And definitely made this reading experience even better. But yeah, as a book, this was fantastic. I had a great time with it. It was just so much goodness wrapped up into this tiny little package, and I cannot wait to read more from this author in the future. And finally, my only 5-star of the month was The River Has Roots by Amal El-Mohtar. This was perfection. Oh man, this is a short little fairy novella that felt like a classic fairy tale in all the best ways possible. The audiobook was also fantastic. There was background music and sound effects and all these beautiful things. It was just incredible, and definitely one that I will reread over and over and over again. So those are all of the 13 books that I read in August, as well as the 3 DNFs. And now before we go, I'm going to do some superlatives, starting with the best book, which was, of course, The River Has Roots, my only 5-star of the month. And this one also takes the prize for best audiobook, hands down. There is no question about that one. The most surprising book of the month was Bryony and Roses. As mentioned, I am not a fan of Beauty and the Beast retellings, so I was very surprised that I ended up enjoying this one so much. I shouldn't be surprised because it's the Kingfisher, but I really wasn't expecting to like this one. I was thinking probably 3 stars max, and I'm happy to have gotten a 4-star out of it. The most disappointing is unfortunately To Let Them Burn, because I was so hyped for this book for so long. I'm pretty sure I bought it the first week that it was released. I was so excited, and then it was just kind of not great, so very sad about that one. The most memorable book I would say would be The Girl from Shadow Springs, because that setting was so cool. I've never seen an icy western before, and it's definitely one that I'll think about for a long time, just because it was so unique in that way. The most forgettable I would say would be Mayra, just because there are several books that I can think of just off the top of my head that are very similar to it, and this one did not live up to the same standard as those ones did, and I've already kind of forgotten the details of the plot, I'm not gonna lie. And finally, the prettiest cover. There are plenty of options to choose from for this month. There were so many gorgeous covers, but I think I'm going to go with A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, because that color scheme is my favorite. If you can't tell by my bedroom, it is the same pink and green as on the cover basically, so clearly I am a fan. But yeah, that'll do it for my August monthly wrap up. Let me know your best and worst books that you read last month, and if you've read any of these books, please also let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts on them. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next video.